After my family found out I couldn't have kids, my mother called me defective, and my dad said I wasn't a real woman. They took my niece away from me and told her I was a bad influence, but I've been documenting everything for months. Last night I pressed send. This morning they called me crying, "Please tell us this isn't real." I'm Maeve Hollander. I grew up in Rochester, New York, in a house that looked like it belonged on a Christmas card: neat white siding, flower boxes, a swing on the porch. It was the kind of home people in our neighborhood admired. My parents, Judith and Harlan, were active in church, hosted potlucks, and donated to charities. From the outside, they looked like kind, stable, God-fearing people. But inside those walls was a different story. Cold silence. Conditional love. Expectations so rigid they cracked me long before adulthood. I was the eldest of 3. My sister Fiona was 4 years younger, always the golden child, effortlessly beautiful, effortlessly adored. My brother Lucian came along when I was 10, and was treated like the crown prince. I was the one who had to earn everything, who was told from age 12 that I needed to set an example, be presentable, stay pure. I did everything they asked. I got good grades. I didn't date until college. I stayed close to home, helped take care of Lucian, and even gave up a scholarship to a university out of state because it wasn't safe for a girl alone. I thought if I followed all the rules, they'd finally love me the way they loved Fiona. Spoiler, they didn't. But I didn't fully realize how disposable I was until I turned 32 and found out I couldn't have children. It was a regular checkup that turned into a life-altering conversation. My OB ran a series of tests after I mentioned some irregular symptoms: fatigue, hot flashes, missed periods. A few weeks and a lot of blood work later, she sat me down and gently told me I had primary ovarian insufficiency. My ovaries were essentially shutting down. I would never conceive naturally. In vitro wouldn't even be an option. Adoption or surrogacy were the only paths, if I wanted to go that route at all. I sat in the parking lot afterward, hands gripping the steering wheel, waiting to feel something other than shock. I didn't tell my parents right away. I told Fiona first. At the time, Fiona was struggling with postpartum depression. Her daughter, my niece, Ren, was just about to turn 2, and Fiona had been distant since birth. I stepped in, offering help, support, and nighttime feedings. Ren even spent weekends at my place so Fiona could sleep. That little girl became the light of my life. She called me Mimi before she said Mama. So when I told Fiona about my diagnosis, I wasn't looking for pity, I just wanted to talk to my sister. She looked blank for a second and then said, "Oh. I guess, at least you know now?" That was it. When I finally told my mom a few days later, we were sitting on her patio. She was drinking tea, scrolling through her phone. I said, "I can't have children." She didn't even look up. She sipped her tea and muttered, "I always thought something was off with you." I blinked. "Excuse me?" She sighed like I was bothering her. "You were never very maternal. Always too emotional or too cold. Now it makes sense. You're just defective." I sat there in stunned silence. Then she said, "Don't look at me like that. This world isn't kind to broken women. You need to find a way to be useful. Women who can't be wives and mothers, what's left for them?" I went home in a daze. When I told my dad the next day, he barely responded. Just stared at his coffee and said, "Not a real woman, then." Those exact words. I remember them verbatim because I wrote them down in my journal that night, under a date and timestamp. That's when I started documenting. At first it was just for me, a way to make sure I wasn't going crazy. Then they started pulling away from Ren. They started telling Fiona I was too attached. That I was fixating on her daughter because I couldn't have one of my own. I began to hear less from Fiona. Then nothing at all. One day I showed up at her house with Ren's favorite storybook, thinking maybe she forgot to reply to my text. Her husband Derek opened the door and blocked the entrance. "She's not here," he said. I saw Fiona's car in the driveway. "Can you at least give this to Ren?" He didn't take the book. Just said, "You should leave," and shut the door in my face. I stood on that porch for 15 minutes before I got back in my car. It got worse. They stopped inviting me to family dinners. Then birthdays. I wasn't even told about Ren's 4th birthday party. I found out when my aunt posted photos. I was the only one missing. I texted Fiona. No response. I called. She blocked me. And then my parents called me one night. We've decided it's best you don't see Ren anymore, my mother said. You're confusing her. It's not healthy. You've always had trouble with boundaries. My dad added, this obsession of yours, it's not natural. Ren doesn't need to grow up thinking women who can't have kids are normal. She's too impressionable. That was the moment something in me broke. Not in the way they'd expected. Not like a meltdown or a breakdown. No. Something hardened. And I knew exactly what I needed to do. Because I'd already been collecting everything. For years, I had journals. Emails. Voicemails. Photos of injuries from when I was a teenager, discipline, they called it. Screenshots of texts. Even audio recordings from calls where they insulted me, shamed me, questioned my sanity. I compiled everything into folders. Labeled and timestamped. Organized. Audio clips, screenshots, transcriptions, and scanned handwritten notes. I included dates when they accused me of trying to manipulate Fiona into giving me Ren. When they called me dangerous. When they told people I was unstable. I even had old Facebook posts from Fiona where she bragged about how much I helped with Ren, and then months later, called me obsessive and unfit. I turned it all into a digital file, Project Light. And then, I wrote a simple email. No rants. No hysteria. Just the truth. Here's what you've done. Here's what you said. This is how you treated me. This is the woman you tried to erase. I attached the folder. I sent it to my parents, Fiona, Lucian, my Aunt Rhea, a few extended family members, and, most importantly, Pastor Laramie. I didn't press send right away. I saved it to drafts. I waited. Then Fiona filed for a temporary restraining order. She said I'd shown up to her house uninvited. That I made Ren uncomfortable. That I was mentally unstable. She referenced my infertility as a reason I couldn't be trusted. I showed up to court with a full binder of evidence. The judge took one look at it and dismissed the entire thing in 5 minutes. I went home, opened my laptop, and clicked send. It was 2:03 a.m. At 6:11 a.m., my phone buzzed. Then again. Then again. First was my father, what is this? Maeve, please tell me this isn't real. Then my mother, you can't do this to us. Please call me. We didn't know you were keeping all this. Then Fiona, you're going to destroy our family. You're sick. Why would you do this to Mom? Then Lucian, are you trying to ruin everyone's lives because you couldn't have your own? But I didn't respond. Because I wasn't that scared girl anymore. I was the woman they built. And now, I was the woman tearing it all down. The rest of that day was quiet. Too quiet. I ignored every call. Every ping. Every voicemail. I turned off my phone by noon. Let them sit with it. Let them feel the weight of everything they had dismissed, denied, or rewritten. But while I didn't respond, I watched from the sidelines. By the second day, word had started to spread. I knew it would. I knew that once people read through those files, heard my mother call me a barren waste, saw the screenshots of Fiona mocking me in texts, and listened to a recorded conversation where my father said, "No man's going to want a dried-up woman with nothing to offer," they wouldn't be able to unhear it. Church friends who had always kept me at arm's length started to reach out. One woman, Marcy O'Connell, messaged me on Facebook. We hadn't spoken since I was 17. She used to lead the youth Bible study. Maeve. I had no idea. Your mom always said you were difficult, but I can see now what was really going on. I'm so sorry. Another message came from Aunt Rhea. You are brave. I always suspected something wasn't right with the way they treated you. I just didn't know how deep it ran. I believe every word. If you ever need a place to stay or someone to talk to, I'm here. It was surreal. All these people who used to raise eyebrows when I walked into a room alone, who nodded politely when my mother said I was sensitive or moody, suddenly saw me clearly. But not everyone responded with guilt or shame. Fiona lost it. She started posting passive-aggressive status updates on social media. I didn't even need to check her page, people were sending me screenshots. Some people would rather destroy a family than accept that not everything is about them. You think you know someone, then they weaponize their pain and call it truth. Imagine not being able to have children and deciding your revenge is turning a 4-year-old against her own mother. That one stung. Not because it was true, but because I could see her fear bleeding through it. She was terrified Ren would one day read it all and remember. Remember how I was the one who brushed her hair and packed her snacks and rocked her to sleep when Fiona couldn't even get out of bed. Remember how I made her laugh, listened to her stories, taught her to spell her name. Fiona didn't want Ren to remember who I really was. She wanted me erased. But Ren wasn't stupid. And she didn't forget. 3 days after I sent the email, a package showed up at my apartment. No return address. Just my name written in messy handwriting. Inside was a drawing. 2 stick figures, one tall, one small, standing next to a tree. Both had big smiles and colorful dresses. Underneath were the words, Mimi plus Ren equals best friends forever. I sat on the couch holding that paper, my hands shaking, eyes blurry with tears I didn't even realize had formed. They hadn't erased me. Not yet. And I wasn't going to let them. After that, the family dynamic collapsed fast. Lucian's girlfriend, Ivy, broke up with him a week later. Apparently she'd read the email and the documents and asked him point blank if they were real. He didn't deny anything. Just got angry, accused her of taking my side. She told him she wouldn't be with someone who defended that kind of emotional abuse. And just like that, he was out. Judith and Harlan stopped showing up to church events. They said they were taking time for their mental health. But the whispers had already started. Rochester might be big, but not big enough to hide from this kind of truth. Their social circle began to shrink. Pastor Laramie quietly stepped down due to stress. No one bought it. And me? I started sleeping again. For the first time in months, I didn't wake up with that tight knot in my chest. I didn't flinch at every notification. I could look at Ren's photos without that deep, suffocating ache. I was rebuilding. Slowly, yes. But for once, the ground felt solid beneath me. I reached out to a local support group for women dealing with infertility and family estrangement. Told them I'd be happy to volunteer, maybe share my story when I was ready. I didn't tell them I already had a whole archive of pain neatly catalogued. I didn't mention the email that blew a legacy to pieces. I just said, I want to help other women find their voice again. They said, we'd love to have you. It had been almost a month since I sent the email, and for a brief, strange stretch of time, everything went quiet. Not peaceful, just quiet. The kind of silence that makes your stomach tense, like waiting for a tornado siren to go off after the sky turns green. My parents stopped trying to reach me. No more frantic voicemails, no more guilt-laced emails. Fiona had gone full Cold War mode, posting cryptic quotes on her stories like, people don't destroy families, secrets do. Some of us are too real for people who wear masks. Don't mistake silence for guilt. Classic Fiona. I knew it wasn't over. Not even close. I thought maybe they'd try to discredit me next. Call me unstable publicly. Leak some kind of family statement. But they didn't. That would have required owning up to the documents, and they couldn't do that without admitting they were real. Instead, they shifted tactics. One Saturday afternoon, I got a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, and almost didn't answer. But something in me said to check the peephole. It was Derek. Fiona's husband. I stared at him through the door for a full 10 seconds before opening it halfway. I didn't say anything. Just wait. He looked uncomfortable. Nervous. Like someone had put him up to something and he was already regretting it. Hi, Maeve, he said. I said nothing. He sighed, rubbed the back of his neck. Look, I'm not here to fight. Fiona doesn't know I came. That got my attention. I opened the door slightly wider but didn't invite him in. He looked around like he wasn't sure if he was being followed. Can I talk to you for a second? Just, off the record? I crossed my arms. You've got 2 minutes. He nodded. Okay. So Fiona's not doing great. And I don't mean that in a feel sorry for her way. I mean like, she's unraveling. And the more she unravels, the more she's dragging Ren into it. My stomach dropped. What do you mean, dragging her in? He hesitated, like he wasn't sure how much to say. She started, telling Ren that you're dangerous. That you're sick. That you hurt her feelings and might hurt Ren's too. She's saying things like, Mimi's not safe anymore. And Ren's getting confused. She asks about you constantly. I swallowed hard. My throat suddenly became dry. She doesn't understand why she can't see you, he added. And Fiona doesn't give her a straight answer. Just deflects or makes something up. I didn't even realize I was gripping the doorframe until my knuckles turned white. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because I don't know what else to do, he said, defeated. You raised that kid half the time for the first 2 years. You were more present than either of us. And now Fiona's weaponizing her because she doesn't want to admit what she did. Did she send you here? No, he said. She'd lose her mind if she knew. I stared at him for a long time. This was the man who once shut the door in my face. The same man who stood by while his wife cut me out of Ren's life without blinking. Now he was asking for help. But I didn't owe him anything. Thanks for telling me, I said. But I'm not sure what you expect me to do with that. I don't know either, he said honestly. I just thought you should know. Then he left. I stood in the doorway long after he was gone, the air around me thick with tension. That night, I couldn't sleep. I thought about Ren, tiny Ren, who used to curl up on my couch in footy pajamas, eating Cheerios out of a plastic cup while I braided her hair. I thought about her wide eyes, her squeaky laugh, the way she once whispered, I love you, Mimi, as I tucked her into bed. And now, someone was telling her I was dangerous. Someone was feeding her a twisted version of the truth to cover their own shame. And I couldn't say anything to her. I couldn't defend myself. I couldn't even send her a letter without risking legal blowback. It made me feel trapped. Helpless. And worse, it made me feel like I hadn't gone far enough. That's when I decided to take it one step further. Not for revenge. For Ren. I reached out to a lawyer. Not to sue, but to consult. I asked about what rights I had as a former guardian figure, what protections were available for non-parent family members who had meaningful involvement in a child's early life. I knew I wouldn't win full custody, or even visitation. But I wanted to document everything. I wanted a record on paper. Because Fiona had built a narrative, and I was going to make sure my side didn't get buried under her fabrications. To my surprise, the lawyer took me seriously. You've got a compelling case, she said. Unusual, but compelling. Especially with all the documentation. So we started the process of filing a petition for third-party involvement, not to force contact, but to create a legal record of my role in Ren's life. To have it recognized. If Fiona ever tried to fully erase me, or told Ren a story that was too far from the truth, there would be evidence. Real, verifiable evidence. And suddenly, it wasn't just about me anymore. It was about protecting a future version of Ren, the teenager, the adult, the young woman, who might one day start asking questions. Who might be told lies and half-truths. Who might wonder why someone who loved her like a second mother disappeared overnight. She deserved the truth. And I was going to make sure it was waiting for her when she needed it. Fiona found out about the legal filing 2 weeks later. I knew the moment it happened, because the fury radiated off her email like heat from a wildfire. The subject line simply read, "What the hell are you doing?" The body of the message was longer, full of expletives, denial, threats about dragging me through court, accusations that I was trying to steal her daughter, and a final jab, "You can't replace what you'll never have. Stop clinging to what isn't yours." I didn't reply. I forwarded it to my lawyer. The court date for the petition was set. It wasn't dramatic, this wasn't some kind of child custody hearing or big legal showdown. It was procedural. Just a request to have my early role in Ren's upbringing legally recognized, documented, and placed in the public record. But Fiona panicked. And in her panic, she made a mistake. She tried to fight it, hiring a lawyer, filing a countersuit, accusing me of emotional manipulation and endangering a child's welfare. She claimed I'd poisoned Ren against her. But she didn't realize the sheer volume of documented proof I had of our relationship, photos, texts, videos, even Fiona's old blog posts praising how much I'd helped raise Ren in the early days. The judge wasn't impressed with Fiona's arguments. She read through the documents quietly, looking more annoyed with each page Fiona's lawyer tried to use against me. Finally, she looked at both of us and said, "You don't erase people from a child's life simply because they don't fit your narrative anymore. Ms. Hollander, your petition is granted. You are legally recognized as a significant caregiver in Ren's early life, and you have a right to keep a record of that involvement. It didn't give me visitation rights. It didn't reunite me with Ren. But it validated me. Legally. Permanently. My presence was no longer something Fiona could rewrite. And that was only part of the revenge. The second part? The fallout. Turns out, during the petition process, my lawyer had requested additional documentation from Fiona's side, text messages, statements, old photos. Things to prove that I wasn't, in her words, obsessed with her child. And one of those documents, buried in a folder Fiona's lawyer accidentally submitted, was an email Fiona had written to our parents. A draft, actually. In it, she admitted she knew I wasn't dangerous. That she felt jealous of my connection to Ren. That she needed to reassert herself as the mother because she felt like a secondary parent in her own home. She even wrote, "Sometimes I wonder if Ren would have chosen Maeve if she could have. It terrifies me that she might." My lawyer found it. And you better believe I read that line out loud, word for word, in court. Fiona's face turned a shade of red I didn't even know skin could reach. She looked at me like she wanted to disappear. But it was too late. The document became part of the public record. I didn't have to smear her name, she did it for me. And the final piece of revenge came not long after. Ren's school held a parent-child art show about a month later. Aunt Rhea went, even though Fiona didn't invite her. She'd always had a soft spot for Ren, and she figured no one would notice one older woman in the back of the gym. She took photos of the art on display and sent me one that nearly stopped my heart. It was Ren's drawing, two people sitting under a tree, one small, one taller, both with giant smiles. And in bright pink marker, she had written, "Me and Mimi in the park." I stared at the photo for a long time. Rhea said Ren beamed when people asked about it. "That's my Mimi," she told her teacher. "She's not around right now, but I still love her." Even after everything Fiona had tried to erase, Ren remembered. Not because I fought for her. But because I never stopped showing up, even in silence. That night, I printed that photo. I framed it. I hung it above my writing desk. Then I sat down and finished the last chapter of the personal essay I'd been working on, about infertility, family estrangement, and the myth of the defective woman. I submitted it to a major magazine under my full name. 2 weeks later, they accepted it. And when it published, the email I received from a stranger in Kansas said it all. "You don't know me, but I just read your story. I cried for you. Then I cried for myself. You're not broken. You're a warrior. And now, so am I." My family never apologized. Not really. My mother emailed me once, trying to find a path back into my life, calling the whole thing a misunderstanding taken out of context. My father never spoke to me again. Lucian moved to Ohio. Fiona and Derek are still together, though I hear their marriage is strained. But that doesn't matter anymore. Because the best revenge? It wasn't a court document. It wasn't an embarrassment. It wasn't even a public exposure. It was this: I kept living. I healed. I thrived. I told the truth. And I made sure they could never erase me again. And someday, when Ren's old enough, if she wants to know more, I'll show her everything. The pictures. The records. The love. And the strength it took to walk away and never look back.